Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Whenever you are watching this, welcome to the 2022-23 UCTV Sports Men's Basketball Preview Show. I'm your host, Cole Stefan, and I am joined by Yurkowski and Sam Calhoun to break down the men's basketball team this season. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good. How about you, Cole?
Doing good.
Splendid. This will be Dan Hurley's fifth year coaching the Huskies, and expectations continue to be high for this program after a season in which they finished third in the conference, again, and earned a number 5 seed in March Madness. First night may have come and gone, but if you missed the festivities, then your next chance to meet the men's basketball team will be on Monday, November 7th at the XL Center as the Huskies take on the Stonehill Skyhawks in their first men's basketball game as a D1 school. Before we delve into the Big East schedule, I want to ask you, what stands out to you guys amongst the non-conference schedule?
I'll go first here. I'll go first here, I love the PK5 this year. I mean, first off, you got Oregon. Oregon's top 25 team, Pac-12 team that is gonna have a significant advantage with the fans in the crowd. But also the entire field is interesting. You have Villanova. We could potentially play Villanova 3 times this year, including the 2 other games. But there are conference teams, so that doesn't matter. But what does matter is that we also have a matchup against 2 other Power 5 teams, either Alabama or Michigan State. Both Michigan State is a team with Tom Izzo, very well coached, but also Alabama, who was real good last season with a lot of young guys that are, I believe, returning this year. And then we also have the chance to play number 1 North Carolina if we go deep into the PK85. What about you, Jacob?
I agree with you about the PK85 tournament. Also, though, I think going to Florida will be very fun for them and a very cool experience. And even though Florida was only an NIT early exit last team, I think that they're going to be better this year, new coach. I think it's going to be a really good game and good atmosphere for them, and it's going to be a good experience.
And one game we haven't quite mentioned yet is one I'm looking forward to, not yet, Brie, is going to be the Oklahoma State game at the Gamble Pavilion. And one reason I think that's important is the first Big East Big 12 game at Gamble Pavilion, ever. And just after having played a former Big East foe in West Virginia last year, it's just so nice to be able to see the fans get involved as we play a highly competitive opponent in the state of Connecticut, on the men's side at least. And just looking at Oklahoma State, they haven't had Cade Cunningham. This is now going to be their second season without him, and they're coming off a postseason ban. But this is a team that's still going to compete with the best of the best. They are in a very good conference in the Big 12, which, as we know, has a national champion, Kansas, and a bunch of other teams. And they could make some noise this year if everything goes right. So I'm looking forward to see how that game goes in particular, because that could, like the West Virginia game, kind of, sort of, that could make or break the UConn men's basketball team's season. So we mentioned the non-conference schedule. So now I have to ask. The Huskies begin Big East play on December 17th when they travel to Indianapolis to play the Butler Bulldogs. What games in conference play are you guys looking forward to the most this season? Jacob, we'll start with you.
First thought has to come to probably Creighton, who is a preseason top 10, top 11 team, returning a few really good players. We go obviously away to their place, but the game that I'm looking forward to is going to be here at Gamble. Even though it's over break, it's still going to be a great atmosphere. Huge game for us, and big opportunity for us to really make a statement and show the country that we are almost or just as good as them.
Yeah, and another big matchup, and it's quite obvious, is Villanova. If you guys remember last year, the Villanova game at XL Center, which is where it is this year again. That game was electric. Dan Hurley got ejected. The crowd. The ending was unbelievable. But now this team is way different. They have a new head coach in Kyle Neptune, and they lost key, a cornerstone of their program the past few years in Colin Gillespie, and Jermaine Samuels too, right? So now. I'm interested to see how Villanova does this year and how it'll set up for a great matchup over break 2 on December 28th, but we also play them to wrap up the season, I believe, on March 4th at either the Pavilion or Wells Fargo Center.
So I will actually just go off of that. I can confirm that game will take place at Wells Fargo Center. But on that note, with Villanova, the thing in that game is going to be Justin Moore, whether he plays, and also Cam Whitmore. Again, yeah, this is a team that doesn't have Kyle Neptune anymore. Or sorry, they don't have Jay Wright anymore. But having a guy like Kyle Neptune in a very good recruiting class, as well as a very, very good team, because that was Jay Wright's thing, is just going to make that game a lot interesting. Now, you also mentioned, Jacob, the Creighton game, which I thought was super important because that, like, home field advantage proved to be a difference last year when we beat Villanova, as Sam has said. But one game I'm looking forward to in particular is when we host the Providence Friars at Gamble Pavilion on February 22nd. We only played them once last year at the XL Center. That was the Big East opener, and we lost. It's such a shame that we couldn't play them again at the Dunkin' Donuts Center. There is a new name to that building. I don't feel like going into it. But just looking at the team in particular, yeah, Nate Watson is gone. Al Durham is gone. But Ed Cooley knows what he's doing. He got some good names in the transfer portal. And also Jared Bynum is back. Jared Bynum was just a problem last year for most teams. And having him back is going to be critical. This is a big game. And this is a game where if like you're a UConn student, I would recommend going. Because this is probably the game of the season, aside from Villanova and Creighton, which unfortunately over break. I will also mention, just looking at the schedule multiple times, both the Xavier games against Xavier and Seton Hall are just as important. Xavier, of course, neither team, of course, is ranked in the preseason AP Top 25. But Xavier is also in a transition period with a new head coach in Sean Miller, who is back for a second stint with the team. And they have a very, very good front court with Zach Fremantle and Jack Nungy. That is going to be a difference, especially if, as you're going to find out later, UConn's front court, that it's going to be a battle of both the boards and the defense in that game. And obviously we split them last year, so home court advantage is going to play a huge part in that series. And also Seton Hall, where home court also played an advantage. Like Xavier and Villanova, Seton Hall is going through a new head coach in, if I'm correct, Shaheen Holloway. And although there were a lot of lost pieces for the Pirates in Jared Roden and Bryce Aiken, there are some key names like Kadari Richmond, who just, as Sam has mentioned in the past, was just a killer to the UConn men's team last year. Like, Seton Hall can still compete with anybody. What Kevin Willard set up in his 11 to 12 years for the program is like a dynasty, a legacy of success. And Shaheen Holloway is just continuing that with his alma mater. Now, those are all the Big East games we can cover, because there will be some other games that, unfortunately, are cupcakes, as well as some that'll be a lot closer than other people think. But now it's time to actually just focus on the team. Last season, UConn had to fill a massive hole with the departure of James Bouknight to the NBA, and they did. This season, the Huskies have to replace two of their starters, as RJ Cole and Tyrese Martin, who combined for 29.4 points per game last season, have gone on to pursue a professional career. Who amongst the players do you think is going to step up and replace a good portion of the team scoring? Sam, we'll start with you.
So obviously there's, of course, returning, there's Dama Sanogo and Jordan Hawkins, Andre Jackson's great playmaker as well as on the defensive end. But scoring-wise, the transfers are going to be super key. Outside of Hawkins and Sanogo, I'm really looking forward to seeing what guys like Tristan Newton and Hassan Diarra do, because I think that the backcourt, I thought, it has such a big hole to fill, and I think Dan Hurley did a great job getting guys like Tristan Newton, who averaged, I believe, 17 points per game at East Carolina, then Hassan Diarra, who already has chemistry with the team, with his brother Mamadou being a grad assistant on the team, and there's been nothing but great things said about him in the press conferences so far this season during practices and whatnot. But I think you need to find your guy in the backcourt that's like gonna produce a lot of points, because Jordan Hawkins, he's gonna have a big step up, I think, this season. But he also averaged, I think, 6.87 points per game last season. It's going to be interesting what happens in the backfield. Jacob, what about you?
Yeah, I agree for the most part with you, Sam. I think I would have to still Tristan Newton. I think he's probably going to start and be the point guard this year. I think he averaged 17 points a game at East Carolina, and even though it was East Carolina, it's still decent competition in that conference. And I think he's got really good length and the size that Hurley looks for in a player at that position. I think he's got really good potential and can really create his own shot off the dribble, and it's something that the team really lacked a little bit last year when the half-court offense broke down. So that's what I would agree with Tristan Newton. That's my guy.
And
Yeah.
one sleeper person I'd like to mention, I think it's become clear that people like Tristan Newton and Jordan Hawkins are guys that are poised to break out. Jordan Hawkins was one of the 3 people who went down to New York for Big East Media Day. I think one person who could potentially break out, especially with, as you're again going to find out, the injury to Andre Jackson, is going to be Naheem Aline, the transfer from Virginia Tech University. Man played for an ACC school in Virginia Tech that literally won the ACC tournament last year and had, I think, what many would call a decent run in March Madness. But like he playing behind guys like Kiva Luma is really going to help him like step up in his game. And now he's playing with guys like Adama Sanogo, as we've mentioned. Like these are guys that are going to help him just grow in his career. And yeah, he's got 2 years left because he's also got the COVID year. But like he could make an impact off the bench or like in a starting rotation. We'll figure more of that out as the season goes. Did you have something to say, Sam?
Yeah, about Aline, I also really love his clutch ability. I mean, as you guys remember, I think it was 2 tournaments ago, Virginia Tech played Florida in a first-round game. It was one of the first games of the NCAA tournament, I believe 2021. And Aline hit this humongous shot that eventually won the Hokies the game. And I think off the bench, he could be a key guy that you could count on with the ball down to the wire. Even though he may not start for the team, we don't know what is happening in practice besides the open ones. But I'm talking about behind closed doors and whatnot. But he could be a key player off the bench, just either whether it's a clutch shot or just getting them to go on a run, whether it's against Oklahoma State or against the Big East schedule.
And
I was gonna say one more thing. I look for Samson Johnson, the big guy, to have a really big year for us. I think he's gonna surprise a lot of people. I think he's got a ton of potential. I think in a year or two, I'm talking about like NBA potential. Freak of an athlete, great length, can jump like crazy. I think he's going to be, depending on how they want to play with the lineup, if he's going to be in there with Sanogo, I think he's going to be a really vital role for them this year.
And I feel like, just to go off of that, one last person I want to mention. You mentioned Samson Johnson. Again, I was going to take that, but that's okay, because I'm rolling with Donovan Clingan, the freshman, the homegrown Connecticut native. Just absolutely dominated high school basketball last year, was the CT Player of the Year, sponsored by Gatorade. And he was the state champion. He just did it all. Like he was that guy in the Bristol Central offense, and like it'll be hard to adjust into the college game, especially with guys like Adama Sanogo in the front court. But if he takes his game to the next level, like through practice and whatnot, he could easily be like a big problem. Even if like someone like Adama Sanogo goes pro after this year, Donovan Clingan is the guy you count on. That 7 foot, that he's gonna be special. Like. It might not be present this year, but in the coming years, he could be a breakout star. Now, everyone knows that Adama Sanogo, the preseason Big East Player of the Year, is probably going to be the leading scorer and defender on this team. But as we have seen time and time again, there have been players who make an impact right from the start of the season that did not get as much of an opportunity to do so last season. Especially with the injury to Andre Jackson, there is a chance for multiple players on the roster to prove their potential. We've already mentioned some of the key players to look out for and who we're excited for, but who is poised to break out this season and why?
I think another guy you gotta look at is Alex Caravan. I think there's even a chance that he starts. And what we've been hearing is he's got a really nice outside shot, and that's something that they lacked a little bit last year. Was a really good shooter, and plus he's like 6'9", 6'8", 6'9", great length, probably good defender. Can even told that he can drive to the hoop too and get some baskets that way. So I think it's a guy that I'm thinking of who could really break out for this team and surprise some people.
I really like your pick in Alex Caravan. I mean, he's a redshirt freshman, real good length, kind of can be a stretch player for us with his outside shot and his size inside and his driving ability. But for me, I think this is very obvious with Jordan Hawkins. I mean, Jordan Hawkins was not named to any of the preseason All Big East teams, and he's not really being mentioned anything besides everyone in Connecticut. I think people are going to be very surprised by how much of an impact he is. He's got, Dan Hurley said multiple times that he has this NBA talent, and he's waiting to break out. He's got great catch and shoot ability, can work off the dribble. He's very poised for a breakout season, especially with a year under his belt. And I mean, when you looked at him last season, he was a freshman. I mean, even though the stats kind of scream freshman, when you look at him, you see the signs of a young star forming in Storrs, Connecticut.
And just to go off of that, actually, one of the games where you could have seen like his big potential was in the Battle for Atlantis game in Auburn, where it was a double overtime affair. But until like I think that one turnover he committed late in the game, he looked like he was going to be a star. There's a reason Jordan Hawkins is called the air fryer, and when he scores in bunches. So I've heard. But one person I also want to mention that I think is poised to break out, I don't want to mention any of the transfers. Nothing wrong with them. I just feel like they've already broken out, and this is more like people in our system that are going to break out. And honestly, I would go Samson Johnson here because, yeah, he's got a wingspan so large, everyone calls him the pterodactyl. But, like, as Jacob, you mentioned in our last question, this is a guy that, like, could be a big problem. It was seen in the dunk contest at first night. He's got special abilities, especially on breakaways and some of the cupcake games. He's going to have some dunks that bring the house down. But just when it comes to close games, though, Samson Johnson's a guy who can, with, I think, his height, I don't know how tall he is in particular, but he's a guy who can, like, take the boards, just run the rebound game. If he stays out of foul trouble, that front court is going to be special. Like, it's going to be Adonis Sanogo and someone else, but that's a front court that's going to be special. That said, one of the most important things to building a successful team is having a starting lineup. Aside from Andre Jackson, who is currently out with injury, what do you guys think the starting five is going to be?
So obviously you're gonna have Andre once he's back. He's named the team captain. You have Adonis Sanogo, who started last year. Jordan Hawkins, I don't believe he started all of last year, but with some players leaving, like Isaiah Whaley, Tyler Pauley, and RJ Cole, Tyrese Martin, that boosts him to a starting role. But also you could talk about, I do love Samson Johnson. His athletic ability is unlike anything I've seen in the past 5 years of watching UConn basketball. And also, so I said Sanogo. You have to replace Jackson in one way. Tristan Newton and Hassan Diarra are both guys that could really play well, but I think Tristan Newton is a lock for starter, but you can switch out Hassan Diarra for Naheem Aline, who you said was really, who could be really special off the bench. He also could show potential to have that starting role with Andre Jackson out just even for a few games. There's going to be players injured inevitably throughout the season. It's going to be interesting what Dan Hurley has cooking inside the Gamble Pavilion as a starting lineup. What do you think, Jacob?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that you said. I think we've been told when Andre is back from his broken pinky, it's going to be Andre Jackson, Jordan Hawkins, Adonis Sanogo. Those are three set in stone. And then I think it's going to depend on what they want to do with the lineup with shooting. Do they want more shooting? Do they want more low post play? And I think I'm just going to go I think they're going to go Caravan. And so, yeah, the three, Caravan and I guess Samson. Tristan Newton. Tristan Newton's going to be the point guard. They need a point guard, yes. Tristan Newton. Tristan Newton's going to be the point guard, I think, and the three returners. And then I'm going to go with Samson, but if they need shooting, if Hurley wants to go more with the shooting aspect, I think he's going to bring in Caravan to start with his length, his shooting ability. But I think Caravan and Samson Johnson are going to be kind of switching off for that final spot once time comes.
I really like the way you approach it, like whether we go for a small ball lineup or a defensive lineup.
Right.
Again, UConn's that kind of team where they can run on anything because they were one of the top defensive teams in the Big East each of the last 2 years. So honestly, I had a hard time determining my starting five, but I'm kind of basing it off of yours. But even then, Tristan Newton definitely gets a starting spot because he has that veteran experience, kind of like an RJ Cole type. If he scores in the bunches he did in ECU, he'll easily be comparable to RJ Cole, who was also a transfer from Howard University. Jordan Hawkins is easily getting a starting spot just because of his potential to break out. The Adonis Sanogo, that was a given. I was going to be Andre Jackson. The hardest position was to determine Andre Jackson. I see him more as a small forward, and honestly, that's a position, as both of you guys have mentioned, could go to anyone, like whether it's Aline or Hassan Diarra or even Alex Caravan. I did also think the best way to approach that is you also put Samson Johnson in that position. And one of the things I've been sold on since I have heard about Donovan Clingan's play in high school is you start Clingan, but that's something I don't see happening until middle of the season or even beginning of Big East play. It really depends on how the season goes. But if you had to ask what my starting five was for the opening night, it's definitely Newton, Hawkins, Sanogo. I could see Samson Johnson in there just because of experience, and he's been under the team under the wings for a year. And then that fifth spot, Andre Jackson's position, is completely up in the air. I'm not quite sure who I'd pick there, but if I had to call it in the air at random, I'd probably go not Hassan Diarra. I'd rather do your Caravan pick just because of his potential. But there's a chance that could be a three-man rotation with him, Aline, and Hassan Diarra, because that any of the three of those players off the bench, that's depth, and the Huskies are going to need that. And that kind of leads into my next question. Each of the last 2 seasons, Coach Hurley's squad has qualified for March Madness, but has been shown the door in the first round by a double-digit seed. So what do you guys think is the key to getting over that hump, and how can that be developed throughout the season?
So I'll start. I think the biggest thing I saw last year was the turnovers. I think the biggest important thing is to limit the turnovers this year and take care of the basketball more. Besides that, they have to improve on their half-court offense. It got a little bit stagnant last year. Part of that was shooting ability, but I think they might have to change a few things up in what they're doing in the half-court offense. And I think guys, maybe like a Hawkins, Tristan Newton, who can really shoot off the dribble, like I said earlier. I think when the play breaks down, someone who can create a shot off the dribble, and that can be really helpful for them. And then added guys like Joey Calcaterra and Naheem Aline, who are these transfers that are coming in and are supposed to be really good shooters, and I think they could also help the offense and hopefully take them a little bit deeper into March Madness.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think the half-court offense was probably the thing that made me scratch my head the most. Obviously, the turnovers are given. I mean, our teams the past 5 years have had turnover problems, and I mean, the opposite of we've been great on rebounding and all of that, but I would love to. I don't want to just copy your picks, but I would love to just see more of sticking with the defense. And I mean, Coach Hurley, I think, is an excellent defensive coach, and I think he can even bring himself up to an elite level this season, and with more and more just defense. I mean, we have a great front court, and I think we have to be able to use that. I think one thing that I really need to see from is actually specifically Adama Sanogo and the centers, like Donovan Clingan and Samson Johnson's around the same height as Sanogo. I need to see the big men. I mean, what I saw a lot in the Big East play is that the big men would be kind of up on the elbow by the free throw line, and that brings that's because we play a lot of man defense. The teams like Xavier and Creighton, they abuse that. They got their way inside the basket and got easy lays. When that happens, when we're on man defense, we have to be able to get a quick acceleration, a quick get off, and just try and get some help defense around the paint. I saw little flashes of that last season, but I just need to see that consistently.
Yeah.
And one other thing I want to mention is foul trouble. This is something I see more with Adama Sanogo just because of his history of foul trouble in the last 2 seasons. But that's the thing about these teams. They have the skill, they have the manpower to compete with anybody, even the best in the nation, like UNC, the number 1 team in the country. But they need to limit their foul trouble. We've seen in games a lot where players have fouled out, and down the stretch, especially when some of these games go to overtime, it's going to cost the team. So if they can find ways to stay out of foul trouble, for example, avoid having 2 fouls in the first half, save most of your fouls for the second half, then it's really going to change the pace of the game, the way Dan Hurley uses his rotation, to bring in players, bring out players, and just will change the way we just win games in general. And that needs to start from day one, because all of your tips really need to start from day one, because even against cupcake teams, respectfully, Stonehill and Boston University, if they don't start those now, they struggle through the non-conference schedule, then they might be legitimately screwed in Big East play. But if they take the time and the effort to make sure they're cutting down on foul troubles, they're disciplined, they're attacking the rim, obviously without getting fouled, and they're just working that half-court offense, then there's a really good chance that they will they will surprise people.
So 2 more things. One is that Coach Hurley has said this recently that, and I agree with him on this, is that they have to space out the court more around Adama with more shooters to give him space. Because last year, a lot of times, it'd be Adama down low, and then there'd be a lot of guys on the court who didn't have the greatest shooting ability, and the paint would get really crowded for Adama, and he wouldn't have enough room to score down there. And secondly, I think just simply, if they have open threes, you got to make a little bit more of them, or just little bunnies around the basket. Yeah. There was just some, especially in a few Big East games last year, where 1 or 2 of them go in. You're looking at a game going to overtime, or even a win for the Huskies. So just those 2 things.
Yeah, I know. I was about to say what you were saying on the bunnies. I mean, one thing I would point out is that we were pretty much one shot away from the Big East championship last year. I felt like we were on a roll, get on runs. I was there in Madison Square Garden. It's just the bunnies. That's been a problem all season. It's just something that the team needs to work on, whether it's with, all their bigs. I've mentioned them multiple times, Sanogo, Sampson, Klingon, because, those guys are going to be key into what our success is going to be like this year.
And one other thing to note before we wrap it up is that we are going to I want to focus more particularly on finishing games. I saw it when we lost to Creighton in the 2021 Big East Tournament semifinals, but this is a team that they need to finish off opportunities. They've won a bunch of games over the last 2 seasons, but if they don't finish it off, it's going to cost them in the long run. It's going to bite them, and it will hurt. That's a guarantee. So before we wrap up the show, I just want to get your guys' outlook on the season. So where does the team finish in conference in the conference? What is their record in Big East play? And how far do they go in March Madness if they qualify for it?
So I'll start. I think losing R.J. Cole, Tyrese Martin, that's gonna be very significant. You're gonna see that this season. But I also think that they're our top half part of the team. We in the preseason poll when Big East Media Day was last week, they were picked to finish 4th. I would love them to be a top 30 team. So I'm gonna say they're gonna be tied for 3rd with maybe Xavier, just around that number, 3rd. While I think Creighton and Villanova are gonna be 1 and 2 respectively. And the other part of the question was March Madness run. I think they have second weekend potential. I think they could make it to the Sweet 16. I'm not so I was confident last year, when the bracket came out and everything. I was confident in our chances to make the second weekend. Unfortunately, we lost to New Mexico State, so in the first round. I don't see this team as a first round exit. I think they get to the round of 32. I think that's their floor.
Yeah. First of all, Big East play. I think the potential is there for them to win the Big East if they execute well and play well. But I think I see them finishing somewhere 2nd or 3rd, realistically. There's just tough games. I think the road games are going to be really important for them to win. There was a few that just slipped away, like Cole was talking about just recently about finishing off, where they had the lead, slipped away from them, especially those road games they had difficulty with. And then for March Madness, I see them, I think potential. They have definitely potential for a Sweet 16, or even, I don't even see why not Elite 8. I think they just have the talent. And realistically, I think probably I'll say them meet the Sweet 16 or round of 32. I just think they're going to be learning from their mistakes from previous last 2 years, first round exits. So I think it's just they're going to learn and get over that hump. I think it's continue the progression for years to come.
And one thing I want to mention is that half of the season is going to depend on Andre Jackson. I don't say Adama Sanogo because, sure, he's had some injury issues in the past, but he's also the Big East Player of the Year. So when he's on the court, he's going to be productive. But having Andre Jackson, especially for stretches like the PK 85 and some of the non-conference games like Oklahoma State and Florida, and even the Big East games, I don't think he's going to be out that long, but that matters. And just looking at that, if I had to be completely honest though, just looking at the standings, no one's going to catch Creighton at number 1. They're just their recruiting class from 2021 was that good, and yet Ike Baylor-Shireman was huge. And then I honestly see them finishing anywhere between 2nd and 4th. They're respectively better than teams like Seton Hall or Marquette or St. John's that are always in the middle of the pack. And there are also teams like Xavier and Villanova that if they'll finish fourth if they can't beat either of them, but they'll also finish second if they manage to beat both of them. Now, in terms of how far this team goes, they're not a first-round exit. There's no way, especially if we get like a single-digit seed that isn't 8 or 9. Then I really think that this team can actually win in the first round for the first time in what really feels
2016.
like since 2016, what really feels like forever.
Colorado.
And they again, like as we've mentioned, just if they fix some of the fundamentals, they'll get past the first round. I would be more of an optimist. But I'm also going to be I'm saying either second round, depending on who we play in that second round, and or a Sweet 16. Elite 8 is a big ask, especially with some of the good teams in the nation like Houston or Villanova, Villanova, Creighton, UNC, all those guys. But if we can at least get to the Sweet 16, and just a mini outlook to next season, just that there is potential. Like with that kind of run, and with next year's recruiting class, that's going to be something special. So that's going to do it for our men's basketball preview show. For Sam Calhoun and Jacob Yurkowski, this is Cole Stefan. We would like to thank you for tuning into this men's basketball preview show, and we look forward to bringing basketball coverage throughout the season.